All right, we're live.
Yes.
And we've already got 11 participants. Let's check all the attendees.
My mom is here as usual.
Your mom's here. Good evening, ma'am. You are a lucky mascot, so thank you for being with us. I've got a lot of other known names. Tilga is there. Hi. Sujit, hi. Sanjay. Rahul.
These are the early birds, huh?
Yeah, these are the early bird. So look at what a draw you are, Stephen.
No. Look, guys, I know you're in early, but this is the moment to just log off, go and get a cup of tea, and just do something better with the time. You don't want to be.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Actually, Stephen.
Well, if that happens, we can play Lotto.
No, Dad, I have a better suggestion for use of our time. I guess Stephen and Alok, you all have a history together. So I think a better use of time would be to, Alok, tell us about your book. Stephen, you've had a peek preview at the book. Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Give a little bit of, some nuggets on Alok's book.
I tell you what, I'm so delighted that, Alok, you changed the book title because Sangram, you might not know this, but Alok was going to call his book something else. And he's now... I'm grateful that you've decided to do that separately. But no, seriously, Alok, achieving successful business outcomes. It's an awesome outcome-based title, but the work that you've done puts you in a different league. So there are lots of executives who talk about their success stories, and I did this and I did that. And they speak on stages all around the world, or they used to, or they speak on screens all over the world. But their stories are just their own success stories. And the thing is, what we know is that for everybody who tried strategy X, there are 1,000 other people who tried strategy X and it didn't work. But because they failed and their businesses went under, we don't know about them or what they did. And so it's the fallacy of success is, do this and it will work. What, Alok, you have done is, researched and studied and, synthesized what the rest of the research world and the academic research and the philosophical research has done. So in a way, Sangram, what Alok has done is not only put together his, experience of business and entrepreneurialism, but cross-referenced it with the rigorous research world that I live in. And that is the best of both worlds. Because when I see, and maybe you come across these people on podcasts all the time, they say, this is not theoretical, this is what I do, and what they're doing is positioning themselves as being the font of all knowledge. And that's great. And I understand that. You've got to position yourself and your knowledge as valuable. But at the same time, what Alok has done is said, well, here's my knowledge and experience, but I've cross-referenced it against this body of work, this thousands of years of knowledge. So that, I think, Sangram, if I could put it in a nutshell, is why Alok's book is so much more powerful than so many other writers' work out there. Because the other writers' work is just, this is what I did, this is the only thing to do. But you've got no reference against the rest of the body of knowledge that's in the world. So Alok, finally, your book is not only relevant to practicing managers. I think I said it was the missing manual for CXOs. It's not only relevant, but it is also rigorous. And for that, I bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. Sangram, this is a funny one. When I sent out the book to 2 or 3 publishers globally, and Stephen asked me, why not India? I said I wanted the rigor of being published outside of India. He laughs though. And by the way, Stephen himself publishes a lot of books for others too. And because the editorial staff outside of India, they know what kind of experimentation, what kind of research the latest which is being done. They know whether my book is in tune or not in tune. So I sent it to him, simultaneously sent it to 3 other publishers. And I remember I sent it on a Sunday evening, my time, and Monday morning, my time. Taylor and Francis, my current editor, she sent a note saying, Alok, I love it. I need 2 weeks, but I'll come back to you. And Steve read my book. By the time he read my book and confirmed to me, yeah, it's good, and he asked me for some changes, they had already accepted it. Then I sent a note out like, I need to make some changes. And she said, no changes. And I said, look, Stephen Sonsino of London Business School, blah, 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 all these books has recommended these changes. Guess what? Both Taylor and Francis, New York, as well as London, because New York was publishing, London was doing the editorial, they agreed, and they actually sent me the piece back. Okay, tell us what changes do you want to do. Now, that's amazing. And Stephen, thank you very much for making that book far more readable than what it is. Actually, there were a couple of things which, I'd spoken to Mr. I was in a meeting with Mr. Tata where he had crucified us on a particular, in a particular year, 3 times he had rejected our business plan. And I know I'm on air and I have to be careful what I talk about whom. And he said, bring that thing far ahead. By the way, Mr. Tata approved that usage of that passage. He was very kind. He's approved. And Stephen, we will get Mr. Tata also on the show.
Great.
And Stephen had told me, move it up. And, he asked me to move 3 or 4 passages. He asked me to make some changes. All of that was accepted. And that's the power that Stephen has, both in the publishing world globally, as well as amongst the researchers and the CEOs of the world. So I think enough of my book, and thank you, Stephen. I must formally say thank you, which I've done many a time. But absolutely, you're a great friend and someone, a great guy to have. So thank you very much on this one. Absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
So I think we should start this. I've got a lot of people, and I do have. We've got Srini. Hi, we've got Srini over here, and I also saw a couple of other names. Okay, I can't see.
But yeah, it's our customary time to start. I think, Shweta, we can take off the PowerPoint screen and let us welcome everyone. It's time to start. So great. Hello and a grand welcome to the 6th session of Guts Glory Story. And what a fabulous journey we've had so far. 5 wonderful speakers. And right now, bang in the middle of it, we have a big man with a big topic. The Leadership Program Director of London Business School going to talk about legacy building in the middle of this crisis. Yeah, but before we get on to that, a brief introduction for those who don't know us. I am Sangram Surve, ad man, filmmaker, and content evangelist. With me is my co-host, Alok Sinha, serial CEO, entrepreneur, investor, and now author. We were just speaking of his book some time back. And here we are. And before we get on to quizzing, I think first 30 minutes, we're going to throw questions at Stephen. He's eagerly waiting for this session. And we're going to quiz him on Leadership 3.0 and what that means. And after that, the stage is all yours. All the wonderful audience that is gathered here on this Saturday evening. And you can discover how to lead your business and your enterprise in this COVID lockdown and in this entire crisis, right? But for a formal introduction of Stephen, it's going to be my friend Alok Sinha, who has a long history with Stephen. Alok, over to you, and let's kick off.
Thank you, Sangram. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome Stephen Soncino, author of a dozen bestsellers, one of the top 30 ranked leadership gurus, head of leadership studies at London Business School, and someone I have given him the moniker of the Leave Your Legacy Behind Guru. Just to let our viewers know, and I was speaking about it, Stephen helped me with my book, Achieving Successful Business Outcomes too. And today, Stephen will delve upon some of his current research on leadership. He called it at Leadership 3.0. We will also delve into some extremely trying moments in his life that changed his perspective towards life completely. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting our power speaker for today, speaking on Leadership 3.0 and leaving a lasting legacy behind, and also a dear, dear friend, Stephen Sonsino. Stephen, welcome to Guts, Glory, and Story. And
great. I'm just going to say thank you so much. Great to meet you, speak to you, and I'll catch up with you in a minute. But thank you for that amazing welcome. Carry on. Act normally.
Thank you. And here's the first one from me, Stephen. And let's begin with the legacy question. It sometimes foxes me also. You believe every leader should leave a legacy. First, what do you mean by that? And
you're leaving all these lovely spaces for me, and I keep wanting to jump in because I'm so excited. I'm going to shut up.
Let me tell you before, I have three parts to this question. So first, what do you mean by that? Why is this the most opportune time? And third, how does a leader build his brand strong enough to leave such a lasting legacy? So three parts to this question. What is it? Why now? How can a leader build his brand to leave such a lasting legacy? Sorry, if the question was too long.
Nothing to do with the question being too long. It's just me being so nervous to be on this amazing show that you guys have put together. It's incredible to be a small part of it. In fact, I think I should leave now before I've outstayed my welcome. You ask a very pertinent question, Alok, and I think the question that really resonates is this question of what's your legacy. But let me start with a couple of other questions. You're not going to get any answers from me today, but you will get a lot of questions, I promise. When I'm working with senior executives, and it's particularly senior executives who have these questions, usually three questions come up as they get towards the end of their career and their life. And the three questions are, did I live well? Did I love well? And did I matter? And living well, I can't deal with that in the short time that we have together. I'm not going to deal with loving well, although I have to tell you, because my wife might watch this, we celebrated our 37th wedding anniversary just last week. So I'm really excited about that. But did I matter? Did I matter? Did I make a difference? And as we get towards the end of our life, we often think, or the end of our career, shall we say, we often think, was it worth it? Was all that worth it? And there's actually a phase that psychologists have recently begun to include, not just sort of teenage years, midlife crisis, but there's a phase towards the end of our lives when we go into something called legacy building in our minds. We're trying to make sense of the world, or sense of our world and the part that we played in it. And that idea of did I matter? Did I make a difference? For me, that's what I mean by legacy. A legacy is not a building. It's not concrete. It's not your name above the arch of a school or a hospital, though these can be elements of your legacy. The other thing I want to say about legacy is people say, when I get to the end of a project, let's look back, or what's the legacy of the Olympic Games? It's something that people regard it as something that you think about at the end when you're looking back. A legacy is something you leave. And I think, no, I think a legacy is something you build. Now, you can build it consciously, or you can build it unconsciously. You can just do your work and hope for the best, or you can consciously try to make a difference. And that's where I would urge people, and particularly now, to be thinking not just how do I cope, but how do I make a difference? And that's why I think COVID and this pandemic time and these COVID tales that you're curating, it's awesome. Because I want people to think, if you're listening to this now, not just how do I get through this, but how do I make a difference? through this? Or how do I make a difference to my time now? So I think there's a very important time dimension to legacy. And most people leave it too late to think about that. The other issue is legacy is a bit like reputation to an extent. Legacy is in somebody else's mind. It's what they think you did or how they think you changed the world. And so some people say, well, I don't need to worry about my legacy because it's in the minds of other people. My reputation is in the minds of other people. I think we all should be concerned about legacy. And I want to say, what do I mean by that? Let me move on to the sort of the second piece of that. And you know, is this an opportune time? And I think absolutely yes. Because there's more than one kind of legacy. You don't just have one legacy. Actually, you can have 5 different kinds of legacy. There are 5 domains for the legacy you leave. And the first area, of course, is your family. And I won't really say much about that, except to say, please participate in your family life. No one gets to the end of their life, their deathbed, and says, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. It's always the other thing. It's always about family and so on. So please take care of your family and spend precious time with your children, with your teenagers, with your young adult families. Anyway, you guys get this more than most in the world, by the way. I also want to say something about the second kind of legacy that you can leave, and that's the legacy to the business that you're currently in right now. How are you making a difference to the business that you're in right now? What needs fixing? How can you take that area of the business that you serve to the next level? Well, what area could that be in? Well, it could be in the third area of your legacy, your professional legacy, whether you're an accountant, an industrial engineer, an administrator, HR, finance, you work on an oil rig, you have a profession. And so how will you change in the course of these difficult times? How will you improve or make a difference to your profession? I don't know if you do continued professional development or training or learning, but how can you change? You know, what needs changing in your profession? So do everything you can to improve accountancy, HR, manufacturing, whatever part you play in the firm, in the business, in the institution that you serve, how can you make a difference there? There's also the industry that you serve, because you can be an accountant in an oil company. So the industry that you serve is different from your profession. So how can you change your industry for the better? How can you make a difference in your industry? There's a corner, particular corner of your industry in which you sit that you can make a difference in. Seek it out. Seek it out and make a difference there. And then finally, the difference that you make in the region where you live, or to the world generally. And I want to end this little bit of a segment here before I talk about brand, Alok. A young man called Rami Makhzoomi, I wrote a book about him called The CEO's Journey. He was an amazing young man, and he inherited his father's business, as young men often do, young men and women. And he grew the business from, I think, $200 million in revenue to $1 billion in revenue. Took it to the edge of an IPO. And you know, people were asking him, and we were sitting in the Le Gray restaurant in Beirut, which looks out over Beirut. And I know it's in a pretty poor state at the moment, but at that time, you know, this IPO was about to happen. And somebody said to him, you know, you're going to do very well out of this IPO, aren't you? He said, this is not for me. You know, the IPO is not about me. It's about my family. And I'm going to make, you know, life well for my children and for my children's children. And then that's it, because after that, I'm going to stop working. And he paused, and then he said, because I want to spend my time changing the world. And, you know, it's like a smack in the face when you hear somebody say that, a young Arab man born in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, wanting to make this massive difference in the world. He spoke on stage in America at the request of Obama. And speaking to the Arab American community and saying, you know, you're looking for young men and women to make a difference in the world. We're here, he said. We're here and we're ready. And I'm just, you know, I'm actually choking up right now just recalling this young man, because he reached the age of 33. We had started a research project together, And he said, great. My wife was involved, Jackie, business journalist. I'm a business school professor. He was a business executive. An amazing collection of three people. We built something called the Tomorrow's Leaders Research Institute. He went to the gym the day we signed the papers for that, and he burst a blood vessel in his head. And within 12 hours had passed away at the age of 33. And, you know, when you ask me why I think legacy is so important, it's important to have a concept of what it is you want to do, but it's also important to take action on it now, to do something about what you think is important now. What Rami taught me through the commitment of his life to getting things done was to set high goals and high standards for yourself, because you never know when your journey will be over. So I would say, in a positive note, to be impatient for change. Be very impatient. If something needs doing, if you can see that something needs doing, you have a responsibility to take action and correct it. Leadership is a responsibility, said Rami. Leadership is a responsibility and not a right. And so I want you, if you're listening to this thinking, yeah, I know there's something that needs doing in my business or in my profession, don't just be a critic, be a change agent. Take charge and make it happen. I don't have time to go into, you know, more detailed thoughts on building a legacy, but I'm happy to share the work that we've done for Virgin Unite on that and the plans that we have. But I wanted to just say something on brand, just because you asked so nicely, Alok. I think one of the ways that we each can change from being just somebody who does the work to somebody who leads the work and who builds legacy in advance is by thinking about your reputation. And the question I ask, and you might remember this, Alok, I think I put this to you when we met in your previous life. The question I put to you is, what are you known for? When people call you, why do they call you? Because for those of us in leadership, and especially now, if people are calling us for our technical professional skills, we're lost. We have to be known for turning around difficult projects, for helping people through this time, for holding their anxiety. We need to be known as leaders, not just as doers, as operational people. So I want to ask you a second question. It's not about what are you known for now, what do you want to be known for? You know, if we're lucky enough to meet a year from now, what will you be known for a year from now? And so I want you to set up in your mind a sort of a potential difference between now and some date in the future. What do you want to be known for? And I hope that some idea of the legacy that you have, or the legacy that you want to build, might be in your mind. You want to be known for making a massive difference in this area. So I'm going to just pause there and say, I am sorry I've gone into such detail on this, but I am so determined to share this message that legacy is worth fighting for, and it's worth fighting for now, not waiting till the end of your career or time. Is this making any sense, Alok?
Absolutely, very profound. And I think this is like the fuel that you have injected to all the viewers who've live today, including me and Sangram, and all of those who will listen to this podcast.
As a matter of fact, I think my next question is very much connected. And I think the question that you rose about legacy per se, we also have a poll question connected to that, because I think I want to make that question relevant to the crisis today. And what we unearthed through COVID tales is that people discovered completely new parts of themselves in this crisis. They didn't even know that these parts of them existed before the crisis actually came, you know. And that's a poll question that I want to put to the audience, because several leaders of organizations are here. And Shweta, if you can just put up the question. The question is, during the current COVID crisis, did you experience a moment of transformation in your own leadership style? That's the question. Shweta, can you Can you put up the poll? Yeah. How many experienced a change in their operating leadership style?
Most. That's what it's coming out to be. Yeah. And I think it is expected.
Yeah.
These are difficult times. It's expected.
Yeah, I think we have a resounding yes to that, and it was kind of expected to get this answer. And my next question, as a matter of fact, Stephen, I'm going to deviate from the question that I was going to ask you next, because I found the answer so interesting. And I have another interesting question from Samir, who was our panelist last time. And the question is, how relevant is legacy building in a crisis? And do leaders behave differently in a crisis? And does crisis throw up a completely different opportunity for legacy building?
Could you just repeat the second part of that? I've got how relevant is leadership building, legacy building in a crisis? And the second part again, please.
Does crisis throw up completely different opportunities for legacy building?
Okay.
So this is Samir Sathe. Samir Sathe was with us as one of the panelists two sessions ago. Thanks, Samir.
Yes.
Welcome. And that's his question, which is.
Yep. Samir, thank you for connecting with me in advance. I so enjoyed your previous piece. A couple of thoughts on your question. How relevant is legacy building in a crisis? I believe it is extremely relevant, and I'll say why. I think it establishes for us as individuals initially, but then for our teams and for our organizations, a sense of purpose. A sense of purpose. And I will come back to purpose a little bit later on, if I may, guys, Alok and Sangram, because I think if we have something that is important, something that is worth doing, then it can mobilize people. It can energize people. And I'd like to get on in a few minutes to my take on Leadership 3.0. And I think that might help to answer this part of the question. But I want to make this point that if you look around, if you actually Google or Bing or whatever your search engine of choice is, leadership pandemic, you'll get a lot of hits. And any of the consultancies that are out there, McKinsey, all of the big name consultants, all of the business schools, including my own, including London Business School, have answers. Unfortunately, the answers are very shallow. The answers are a little bit general. I mean, take a look, make your own judgment. But on one site, I saw, what have you got to do now in the crisis is take care of yourself, actually, gentlemen and ladies. Be careful, look after you. Not at all thoughtful about the organization, not at all practical, because of course, no one has experienced this before. The other issue about almost all of the thought leaders in the world, there's one or two exceptions. I particularly love the work of Linda Grattan, my colleague at London Business School. She is actively researching what the pandemic means for organizations and doing polls much as you guys are. So take a look at the work of Linda Grattan. But there are other sources of information out there, very general, generic information, and also very local, parochial, I would say, and very, very Western. I would urge you to believe more in the comments and advice of the men and women working within your organization, because they are much closer to the challenges that you immediately face. So Samir, I believe that legacy building, focusing on the really important things that need doing, is significant in a crisis, because they are going to be about one of two things: either survival. We need to survive this. So what needs fixing? What do we need to build to survive? But not just to survive. What do we need to do to thrive in this time? And those are likely to be big issues. There are going to be some small tweaks around the edges that we can take to make things happen. Of course, working from home, virtual working, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the coffee the water cooler conversations. I know, Alok, that's something you miss a lot, is the water cooler conversations, just bumping into people in the corridor. That's gone. So how do we replicate that sharing of knowledge? The second part of your question, and I'm in danger of getting so excited, I will just go completely off agenda here, which is, stop me if I'm going off topic, guys.
Just keep going. Just keep going.
You know, I think you're right that the crisis does throw up different opportunities. And I think particularly it's different opportunities about leadership for me. In my area, in my domain of experience. So it throws up different opportunities. And the primary opportunity is to reflect on, what does leadership mean for me? What does leadership mean for me? Because I think in the current context that we live in on a daily basis, it's all up in the air. Guys, can I pick up on Leadership 3.0 here?
Absolutely. That is the next question. Just go ahead and do it.
I've been looking at leadership for 25 years and leading companies of my own and failing bitterly in companies of my own. I launched a great company about .com strategy in 1999. And for those of you that were born in 1999 or before 1999, you'll know that was the year of the .com crash. So my timing is superb. So don't do anything when I say you should do it. That's just a little hint. But if you go back to what leadership used to be thought of in the world, it was Leadership 1.0, if you like, was about charisma. It was about the charismatic leader, and all the literature and the research and all the models of successful leaders were middle-aged white, usually Western men. Charismatic individuals. And so charismatic leadership theory was all the rage. And you can see it in the books that we would see in the Heathrow Business School bookshop. You know, the airport bookstores were full of Jack Welch, Lee Iacocca. This was the model of leadership. Be a strong, aggressive, dictatorial leader. And then in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, we began to see what I call Leadership 2.0, which was the move towards getting people to work together. And you saw people like John Katzenbach at Harvard Business School talking about the wisdom of teams. It's about collaboration. So collaboration is Leadership 2.0, getting teams of people to work together, because we know that a team of people working together, a firm of people, an institution working together is far more productive than one person saying, do this, do that, and then everybody else just being a zombie pair of hands. We don't want zombies working for us, just doing exactly what we say. We want teams working innovatively, working proactively to solve problems. And that lasted for about 15, 20 years. And this a recent move to try and get back to what charismatic leadership was, to have the individual in charge, but a much more honest way of doing it. And there's a trend that I'm a little bit uncertain about at the moment called authentic leadership. But let me park that for a second. I believe, and Samir, this kind of goes some way towards your, again, to your question. I believe that Leadership 3.0, which is, I believe, relevant now, is not charisma. Individuals telling people what to do can't help right now. It is to some extent collaboration, but above all, Leadership 3.0 is about community. Leadership 3.0 is about community building and pulling people together and saying, we are a community, this is what we stand for, this is what we're trying to do. And it's a much more a we-focused initiative than even collaboration. Collaboration, I want my teams to do well. But I think this idea of creating communities, I think it should, Alok, I think you will understand this, the creation of a culture of people who know exactly what needs doing and can figure things out and have a sense of identity. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. That's what we need right now. And I wrote a paper based on some research I was doing at the very start of this COVID pandemic, because I believe that the pandemic has made us all startups. I believe that if you want to hashtag we are all startups now. I think there are some groups, legal firms, regulatory firms, some finance firms are doing extremely well because we're all trying to figure things out. But the rest of us, we are all startups now. And why do I say that? If you think of a startup, Alok, maybe I'm going to ask you something on this. You know, when you are building a startup and you are the startup king on this, you're identifying people, you're hiring people, you're sort of hiring people. I haven't started as many organizations as you, but you're looking for people who share a mindset or a mentality or a particular kind of culture. Tell me a little bit, briefly, if you would, about when you are building a startup, what kind of people are you looking for, and how do you align them to the vision? I would love just a couple of minutes on that, and then I'll pick up on that. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. In fact, we've done that. We have a startup, and so and Samir also spoke about it a little while ago. So you want people who are at least aligned to the purpose, the overall purpose. They believe that you're going to do something which is different, which makes a difference to the world. But you also make sure you are people who are not your mimics, because then everyone thinks alike. So if you are a person who cannot see risk but opportunity, you need to have people who can manage the opportunity and see risk and balance it. So it's a team, and everyone's doing everything. I mean, if it is a startup, all of you are doing all the work. So there is no hierarchy. You're discussing, you're working 18 hours a day. That's how it works.
Yeah, that's exactly what we see. In a startup, you have, if we see the leaders and the managers, imagine a Venn diagram. Let me paint one in midair. Here's the leaders and managers and the people directing the business from the beginning. And then you also have the men and women who are delivering the business. And what we see in startups is a huge overlap, because it's much clearer what it is we're trying to do, and everybody understands the direction. As an organization ages and the men and women who are actually doing the work, you see these, the culture sort of teases apart. There was a brilliant American television series called Undercover Boss not so long ago. And the idea of go back to the shop floor and find out what's really going on. They would disguise themselves or wear a hat, and nobody knows what the top executives look like anyway. I urge you, take a look at these. A lot of these episodes for Undercover Boss are on YouTube, and you can watch the shock of the senior executives as they discover what the lower employees and men and women within the organization find, because it's completely separated. But what we're seeing now in COVID times is a greater clarity of what we need to do, and everyone is willing to pull together. So back to Samir's point, there's an opportunity here for greater clarity, to your point that I hope will come up in your next book, Alok, that vision is not enough, that it's also very much about everybody understanding that and pulling together in the same direction. And if that's the case, then we are building a legacy of community, that we are all in this together and we all know roughly what direction we're going in. We need to survive for our sake, and we also need to thrive to continue to build going forward. I'm going to get sucked into a time loop here and completely run out of time. So I'm going to pause it there and say, I hope that's enough to be going on with. We are all startups now. And while we are all together focused on the survival of our business and thriving, there is a huge, Samir, leadership opportunity to carry people forward and say this, the very business itself, this is our legacy, to keep it alive and thriving. Does this make sense?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think the next question also is an extension, and how do we take this entire conversation forward? Because while we are talking of purpose, while we are talking about, finding our legacy during a crisis, one thing that's changed during COVID is, we're all fast separated, we're all remote. And leadership always, going back to 1.0, it would be a leader standing on, a platform, motivating people. If it was teams, it would be huddles, people getting together. And now suddenly all of us are staring at these little boxes in the Zoom window. Now, what challenges are there for a leader in a remote world where he doesn't have access to his people, where everything needs to be taken on a war footing, but there is no battleground for people to address? We should be just looking at screens. So how do we take the leadership challenge in a remote world? That is the question which I think a lot of people have asked. It was also there as a part of our original questions to you.
That's right.
Yeah. It's a really great question. It's a really great question. And, you know, there's a lot of enthusiasm for Zoom meetings in the early days. It's very different. The meetings are becoming, you know, much shorter and much more focused now, which is great. Here's my, I think there's a downside and an upside. I think the downside of the way we're living at the moment, the downside of remote working is that, you know, I decide I need to speak to Sangram. I like him a lot. He's a great guy. Let me pick up the call, or we'll have a call with Sangram. This Alok guy, I don't really like him. So I'm gonna kind of cut him out of my day to day. So what I think is happening when we are all individualized is we can create our own echo chambers. You're only speaking to the people you want to speak to. And yes, you're playing some part. I've got to go to a meeting with Alok next week and I'll be on the call with him, but I can kind of tune him out. So I think there's a real danger that our DNA of the organization, our leadership DNA, if you will become polarized, and we will actually only hear in an echo chamber from the people that we get on with or that we like. True. You know, in the previous world that we lived in, leaders were like a pinball. You know, the whole sort of pinball machine. The ball goes up, you hit the rubber thing, and you bounce off, and you bump into someone else, and it's a much more randomized world where you are constantly fed information, and so that, I think, is the piece that we're missing. So here is a very striking, I'd like to think, message for you, and that is to consciously seek out the men and women whose ideas you don't entirely agree with, and to have conversations with the people who have different opinions. Now, this is going to be a challenge because, you know, I've got to mail Alok and say, Alok, you know, I know we don't agree about everything, but I'd like to, I need to hear your perspective. Can you give me your insights on X or Y or whatever it is? And it's not, I'm not trying to persuade him of my way of seeing the world, but I'm trying to hear his side. And my hope is that by sharing his input, he might then listen also to mine. So I think the great challenge we face is to raise and air the conflicts and differences of opinion that we have, and move slowly towards cooperation. To go from conflict to cooperation in this disparate, disconnected time we have, I think is a real challenge. And I think that it's our responsibility not to replicate those coffee, you know, water cooler conversations, but to consciously say, I cannot leave Alok or whoever out of the conversation. I must keep them involved. There are other things we can do as well. There's a writer and a speaker called David Meerman Scott, who wrote The New Rules of Marketing and PR. And on his website, because he and I and everybody have been blocked from going on speaking engagements and so on. But he has written an amazing guide to virtual meetings and behaving in the virtual space. So go to his website, davidmeermanscott.com, and absolutely absorb everything he has to say about working virtually. Also, Linda Grattan, who I've already mentioned, is an absolute goldmine of information on working virtually. Let me just check in with you guys. I just got a message on my system that I have a video problem. Are you still getting me, or am I talking to a blank wall?
We can see you. You're not blanked out.
Just wanted to check in.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I again, this is something I feel very passionately about. I think it does make a difference, but we have to, as leaders responsible for leading a particular team or the organization, we need to take conscious responsibility for bridging those gaps, those things that working from home and working virtually have done for us. I hope that makes sense.
Fantastic. I mean, you really bring this out so beautifully, because this is the hidden side of what can happen today, and we forget about it, because the natural instinct is
challenge
to send to the people who listen to you. So this is the hidden side. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. Good. Where should we go next?
So
gentlemen?
let me ask you. So we had another poll question. And by the way, there was a cheeky one which Sangram wanted to ask. Sangram, do you want to go ahead and do that?
this is purely out of my curiosity, Stephen. And since we're talking of leadership 3.0, I think today we are seeing a whole array of world leaders, ranging from Trump to Putin to, Jessica Ardern from New Zealand. And who do you think fits in the leadership 3.0 definition? Which are the world leaders who you think we should be looking up to as role models?
Stephen, let me remind you, it is not a question who is not. I know the answer. It's a question who is.
You've come to the wrong person. I think I'm quite cheeky, unless you've already guessed. Of course, the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. My wife and I wrote the 7 failings of really useless leaders. So I study failings. That's why Alok and I get on so well. I'm sorry, no, I'm just cheeky. Here we go. In the context of community, who are the people who build communities? That's what I would urge you to look for. Leaders who build communities now and later, forever. And I also have a different group of people I want to think about. And one of the amazing things about India, one of the many amazing things, is that you have a Teachers' Day. And you appreciate your gurus. And so I would urge you to look to your teachers. Look to teachers as a role model, because when you share knowledge, and those of us in leadership are no longer, unless you dig something out of the ground, unless you polish the diamonds, unless you are an engineer, we don't work with our hands. Mostly leaders work with this muscle up here in our minds. And so for us, the thing that we do is we create and curate knowledge. And so teachers are a really important role model. And so as a teacher who was very important to me, I'd like to refer to Marshall Goldsmith. Marshall Goldsmith, the amazing coach who is constantly building communities. Now, I want to tell you a quick story, because I first met him not in America or in the UK. I met him in India, in Hyderabad. I heard this voice in the lecture theatre behind me. That's an American voice, and I know that voice. Who is it? And I went round, and it was Marshall Goldsmith. He was teaching in the exact lecture theatre behind me, and he was teaching coaching to individuals while I was teaching coaching to managers. And he said, let's meet and we'll chat. And I was a little fanboy here. I was in absolute awe of this amazing guy. And he's written 35 books. I've written 15, which is not too bad, but he'd written 35. And I said, look, how do you stay at the cutting edge? How do you stay at the cutting edge of teaching and education? And he said something that has stayed with me since I first met him, and I think is relevant here today. And he said, you have to reinvent yourself. You have to take every opportunity to reinvent yourself. And I think this is such an opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's not an opportunity we wanted, but it is an opportunity to look clearly and honestly at ourselves and to say, which parts of me, what do I do that I want to retain and grow and develop? And what do I do that I want to stop doing some of? And I said, that's an amazing insight, reinvent yourself. But how do I reinvent myself? What do I need to do? And he said, the first thing is, you've got to change your story. What story are you telling about yourself? I'm an accountant. I'm an engineer. I'm an oil person. I'm a farmer. Because he said the story you need to be telling about yourself is you're human and that you care for others. And maybe I'll come back to that in a little while. The second technique he shared was building a brand, which to some extent we've touched on, so I won't drill into that too much. But I think it's to recognize that we as leaders have a responsibility as a talisman for our people, not to stand above them or to be dictators to our people, but to stand for something for our people. Our people will imbue us with meaning, will imbue you with meaning. What do your people think you stand for or mean? And I love this idea of reinventing yourself. And I think this, back to Samir again, you've really got into my ear with that question. Samir, it is about reinventing ourselves. So yes, this is an amazing opportunity. Teachers.
Who's your pick amongst the current world leaders, Stephen, who's your pick?
Say one more time.
Who's your pick amongst the current world leaders?
I think he missed that. He said, he said, go to the teachers. No.
Yeah. I'm not going to pick world leaders.
That's what. So I have a question which is slightly related, and I'm interspersing questions from the live audience as well as a couple of questions that are left, but I don't want to leave the live audience behind. Srinivas Sampath, we're talking about Leadership 3.0. But we are right in the middle of Industrial Revolution 4.0 because, social distancing, more and more automation, artificial intelligence within the factories, people not meeting each other. How do leaders navigate this? People know that, the environment of tomorrow will be very different. It'll be even robots as your co-workers. So how do you build trust under such in such an environment? How do you navigate that?
So this is a profound question, and one that a group of managers and I are looking at. I run a little thing called the Future of Leadership Consortium. What is the future of leadership? What is the future of leadership? It's a book that's going to be released in about 12-14 months time, and I'm in the last phases. This is a long-running project, because what does leadership look like? And we started this research even before COVID, but it's become even more pertinent. Let me take half a step back, Srinivasan. What is this time most like? Let me just sketch out how I see this time. The context of this moment is our Second World War, it seems to me, for our generation. And it's an invisible enemy. And I believe that if we were to look back at the 6 years, 1939 to 1945, of the Second World War, we'd see a lot of individual nations fighting, struggling on their own, before we saw the alliance of various nations going forwards. And I think we're in a situation where we're in the early stages of our war against COVID, and everybody has been focused on their own country. And I think the solutions will come when we take greater recognition that we are better together. So we're in a war, and I hope that this war against COVID won't last 6 years, but I think it will last years. I think it will be 18 months, 2 years, maybe 3 years if we're lucky. And now all the talk, I was a biochemist in a previous life, so I'm following all the vaccine work with great interest. And I know for a fact that, we've got to manufacture whatever vaccines are created, and there may be more than one. And then looking at it logistically, some of my clients include GlaxoSmithKline, GSK, Sanofi Aventis. I know that the logistics, the distribution to get this to every person in the world, that also is a challenge. Let's assume that's all done. Let's assume that's done. Then if you think back to 1945, was everything bright and light immediately after? No, it wasn't. There was global recession and a depression for many years, and for 5 years, for 10 years. I mean, even look back to just the financial crisis of 2009, 2010. It's taken 5, 6, 8 years before that came back up again. So I think we need to take a long-term view of leadership to help people get through, to reduce people's anxiety. Now, I'm not an economist. This is a personal reflection. This time most reminds me of what I know of. I wasn't there during the war, but I've studied it a little. My father was involved. So I think this time is most like a war. And what does that mean for industrial revolution and building trust? It means that we must take every opportunity not to share the platitudes and banal generalisms of our political leaders right now. This is about humanity. This is about humankind. And how are we as people going to get through this? So I think every individual leader, every person who has a platform, a meeting, free, all hands calls, any documents that we write, we need to be sharing this message that we're stronger together. Yes, we will get through this, but we will get through this with honest sharing of the results and the data. And when people see you honestly, and they can look in your eyes and see that you mean what you say, they will be, well, it's back to know, like, and trust. You know, too many times we see in our politicians, the sort of shutters come down and you can't see behind their eyes. And it's clear that they're spinning us a line. So just Sangram, I won't pick out individual political leaders, but I'm just saying, look in their eyes. Do you believe them? I think when people say, how, one of the questions after a session on authentic leadership is, how can I be authentic? It's a difficult question, except that you need to call it like it is. Say, yeah, it's a difficult time right now, but the future is us working together to solve these things. If we look back at rhetoric and how people speak and how people talk, and actually the best movies have a moment, a speech in a great leadership movie. I'm thinking of The Matrix. There's a moment when Morpheus, the leader, stands up the top and says, we've got these difficult times ahead, these machines that are coming to kill us. But I know that when we work together, we can overcome these machines. Now, at that point in the movie, at this point in our lives, we have no solution to the virus. But if we work together and call people to work together with us, we align those Venn diagrams, the us and them, all of us together, we create a community and they can see that you believe what you're talking about. And so I'm going to pause here and say, Srinivasan, I think it was, building trust. If we're not building trust every day by speaking honestly and authentically, we may as well give up and go home. And I don't think this race, those of us on this call, are on this call because we want to make a difference. And I urge you, do what it takes, do what you can, where you are, with what you have, to share your vision for the future, a vision about us as a community working together to get through this. I have to stop it there.
Thank you. Maybe we can slip in one more question, Sangram, a couple of more. So Steve, you are a prolific writer, right? You've written 15 of them. And I remember when I was publishing my book with TNF, it took me 9 months to go through the journey from the time I delivered the manuscript till the time they finished. Now, in today's world, when things are moving so fast, and you need these leadership stories to be propagated, to be made viral.
Yes.
And you spoke about the fact that you can leave legacy. A lot of people have these solutions. They want quick, they want this to be published and quick out in the market. In this time where it takes 9 months, what's your suggestion? I mean, I know you run Authors Channel and you help authors write books, but is there a way out of this 12-month cycle? So, 6 months to write and another 6 to 9 months to publish. Is there, and by the time it's over, is there a way out?
You're absolutely right about the length of time that publishing can take. If you talk to a mainstream publisher, if you want to get a book out, it can even take a year just to find the right kind of publisher who's relevant for you. And you had a very special, way of getting in, because your ability to write a great proposal, won over Taylor and Francis and others as well, Bloomsbury as well, I think. So many people, it's one of the great things. We all want to write books. And for me, writing a book partly is a way of capturing your legacy. I think I mentioned I'd written a book on Rami called The CEO's Journey. It was my gift to his family. I waved away all the rights in that book. I wanted his daughters, 3 daughters under 10 at the time that he passed. I wanted them to know their father as best I could. But there are many men and women maybe on the call right now or watching the recording of this who have a story to tell, who have a message they want to share. And you're absolutely right. The traditional mechanisms for getting your story out are really painfully slow. So one of the things Jackie and I did, we've written 15 books, as I've mentioned, and we've made every possible mistake it's possible to make. So we wanted to share the mechanism, share the process. So one of the things we've done is literally codify our process. So if you're interested, you know, on my website, and I'll give you a link at the end, there's a checklist which tells you, in fact, cunningly, I printed one out. I've got a checklist called the Book Launch Blueprint, how to write and publish your book in 12 weeks. I can get you, or you can get, if you follow the process, a book from blank page to a book on Amazon in 12 weeks. If you don't run around like a headless chicken, if you focus on exactly what needs to be done and nothing else. So we've stripped down the process. So you basically, the process is very briefly, identify what it is you want to include in the book, create a table of contents, identify who you need to talk to, craft it. And basically in this 12 weeks, you're spending just an hour a day. You know, you don't have to park the rest of your life. And then once you've done that, you can post it on Amazon. And Amazon have some extremely powerful tools to allow you to publish your books. It's a little more complicated than that because you might need help editing your work. Sometimes that's something that you want to think about. How do you polish the words that you use? So having an editor is a good thing. We also have a program that can help people do that. And our next program, the Authors Program, is kicking off at the end of October. If anybody's interested in knowing how we do it, please get in touch. I'd love to share with you how we do it. You can do it under your own steam with our free tools. We've even created an app now called the Authors Grid that'll kind of, this week you need to do this, next week you need to do that. So the point, Alok, is the process is very clear now about how to get your message out there, and we're happy to share that with people. Question though, what's your story? If you've got something worth saying, then choose long form content, not a meme or something that you post on internet today and it's gone in 5 minutes, or even a white paper that somebody will skim and just immediately forget. But a book, think of a book, whether you're reading it on Kindle or in real life, somebody is holding your work. And if you grab them, then you are persuading them. Your words are in their head as they read your work, and you persuade and influence them. So whether you want to market a product or a service that you sell, or convey to people a way of working, a new way of working, a book is a powerful influencing tool to persuade people of a new course of action. So I commend writing a book. It's very old school, Sangram. Don't get upset with me here. It's not sort of this modern bloggy, webby stuff. It's a bit old school, but it's a very powerful tool. And if I can help anybody write a book, then I will. And I've got some resources that can help you with that, which we might mention at the end.
Absolutely.
By the way, we've got a great team over here. Viewers, if you're aware. So on one side, we've got Stephen, who can help write books. On the other side, Sangram, I don't know whether you guys are aware, whether it is Amish Tripathi, whether it is Ashwin Sanghi, any of those guys. Sangram is the guy who's gone behind them and done what they've done. Amish was not even getting a publisher, and that's where it started from. And Sangram is the guy who's broken all barriers in promoting books, and he's the young boy of book promotion. So we've got a great, and that's absolutely accidental. We've got a great team sitting across me. So reach out to them, both of them, if you're looking at
awesome. I didn't realize we're competitors then, are we?
No, he's a promoter.
We're partners. Okay.
He promotes. He's an advertiser.
I think I've been very fortunate that I've worked with some of the best writers in India. Amish is a dear friend. Ravi is a dear friend. Ashwin is a dear friend.
Brilliant.
And, whole credit goes to the quality of their writing. And because of the great content that they wrote, we could think of great amplification ideas. Unfortunately, it worked for them. We also did a literature festival some time back where we hosted 40 of the topmost best-selling authors in the country. And after that, once in a while, and every once in a while, we get inundated with CEOs who want to write their own stories. And we come into the picture only after the book is written, right? And most of them have this first that I have a lot of stories to tell, but how do I go about it? And I guess we've got the man. We've got the man here who can tell you how to go about it. And there's enough literature in terms of how to amplify it as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we just about got a few minutes, and I can squeeze in one last question more on a personal note, and post that we'll call it a day. And this is Stephen, going back to your story. And when we're talking about crisis, I think we're talking about leadership. We often talk of those crucibles moments, when one single incident becomes a turning point in your life. And when we spoke to you, you clearly told us that there was a time in your life at the age of 26 when you had a personal tragedy, and that became a turning point for you. Could you tell us briefly about that and how crisis became a turning point in crafting your journey forward?
Yeah. So there's always something, isn't there? There's always something. For me, why I do what I do and why I'm so passionate about taking action now is that when I was 26, I was actually in a meeting and I was actually speaking. And suddenly I realized that my tongue had swollen to like 20 times its natural size, and I actually couldn't speak anymore. And then I put my hand down on the table. I was standing at the front, and the pins and needles, and they sort of shot up my arm, and I suddenly felt very nauseous. The long and the short of it is that I had a stroke at age 26. Luckily, it wasn't a long-lasting stroke. It was one of these trans-ischemic attacks. It's a little thing that a blood vessel at the back of your head sort of shuts off for a fraction of a second. And I lost half my body, and I had to lie down on the floor. And age 26 is not the age that you expect someone to have a stroke. But to all intents and purposes, everybody around me in the meeting thought I was having a stroke. And so I went to hospital, and in the UK, we have this wonderful thing called the National Health Service. And they were all amazed. All these doctors kept running around saying, "Are you the young guy who's had a stroke?" Because they all wanted to see. The weeks afterwards, when I wasn't allowed to go to work, I wasn't allowed to do anything exciting, I wasn't allowed to watch children's television because it's too exciting in case I had another stroke. It's a time of great reflection. And I think now is also a time of great reflection. For me at 26, I realized that I had a close thing. That was a really close thing. And so I realized that, and my last signing off from the doctor was, "Okay, I'm done. I'm fine. I can go back to work." He said, yes, it's fine. You can go back to work, but it could happen again at any time. It's really encouraging, right? And I felt, okay, that means every day has to count. Every day has to count. Legacy is about now. Your legacy is everything you're doing now. The long term has just shrunk. I think we're not thinking about Vision 2030. We're thinking about what I'm going to do this year before the new year starts. We're thinking about what do I do in spring 2021. So the future's gone. And also the past is slipping away. Sadly, my mother passed away not so long ago. She had a very sudden pancreatic cancer actually of the bile duct, a little piece in the middle of the digestive system. And so in 6 months, she started and she passed away. And so that was a moment when your mother passes away. Those of you who've lost your mother, I share your feelings. Those of you who are lucky enough still to have your mother, please hug her and tell her you love her. What I realize is that I'm still growing up. actually. I thought I'd finished growing up, but when you move a generation and you get closer to the end of your career and your time in this world, you ask yourself, what am I here for? And I was lucky enough at age 26 to be asking those questions then. At age 26, why am I here? Why am I still here? What have I still left to do? And I remember my mother telling me as a kid a wonderful bedtime story. It's not really a bedtime story. It's a story written by Leo Tolstoy, the guy who wrote War and Peace, a massive. But she told me a story, and it's kind of a fable, and it's called Three Questions. And I so remember this, and this is a lovely thing I want to leave you with. There are only three questions, and you can find the story. It's Tolstoy's Three Questions. And the three questions are, when is the right time to do anything? The second question is, who is the right person to listen to? And the third question is, what is the right thing to do? It's a beautiful story, but those questions are permanent questions. They are always with us. And I can hear my mother's voice in my head sharing these stories with me in this fable. And of course, the answers are, well, you've got to figure them out for yourself. But the right time is now. The right person to listen to is the person you happen to be with in this very moment. And the right thing to do is to serve that person that you are with right now. Because now is the only moment we have. There's no future right now. The long term has gone because of COVID, and the past is slipping away. So please do what you can, where you are, with what you have. Build your legacy now. What matters now for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very profound.
Very profound. I think that was a lovely session, and I think I'm just going to do a very, very quick recap. I think we spoke about building a legacy, and I think we spoke about the 5 aspects. When you're building a legacy, think about what would you like to build a legacy as far as your family is concerned. What difference would you like to make in your business? What is the legacy you would love to create in your profession? If you're an ad person or a filmmaker or a software professional, how would you make a difference to your industry? And lastly, how would you make a difference to geography, right? Then we moved on to see how the question of legacy is extremely important in a crisis, and we are in a crisis. And the right time to actually start thinking about your legacy is now, when you're in the middle of a crisis, because as Stephen rightly said, this is the time when a lot of us have the time to reflect and to think back on things that really matter to us. A connecting point, which I think the conversation went on to, is to think of the current time like the World War. And like the World War, where individual nations were crafting out their strategies and ultimately all of them collaborated, okay? This is the time which is going to last for a long time. And unless nations learn to cooperate, overcoming this crisis on a nationalistic level is really going to become difficult. But I think what took the cake was your last statement. I think the entire 60 minutes was worth only for what you said in the last 3 sentences. And which is, what is the right time? Who's the right person to listen to? And what should you do? And I think the answer is so brilliant, because the right time is now. The most important person to listen to is the one with whom you are right now, because he's in front of you right now. And what is the right thing to do? Do full justice to him. I think very brilliantly, very, very brilliantly put. So let's focus on our current, and legacy building is not something in the future. It is something that we have now in the middle of the crisis. And I think with that, I should summarize. And of course, the last thing I'd love to add is all those people who are thinking about writing a book, thinking about writing their legacies, writing their stories, we've got the right person here. And when we transcript this into a blog, I'm going to put in all the links. And those links will have how do you get in touch with Stephen and how do you take your writing ambitions forward, right? With that, I think I've mostly covered everything we had to say. Alok, feel free to add anything.
Stephen, I think we were already overstepped time, and absolutely good. Stephen, thank you very much for the evening. Scintillating, that's all I can say. Fantastic to have you here, and so proud to have you as a guide and as a friend. Thank you for spending the hour. And just as we sign off for our viewers, next week, we will have Siddharth Mittal. He is the CEO of Biocon. And he'll talk about how is the shape of medicine changing into more personalized formulation, how researchers are fighting to reduce the cost of the medicine, and how future of healthcare will be so different. Remember the new Apple Watch, and he'll talk about it. And of course, the big one is, when will the vaccine be found, and what is Biocon doing, as well as the other companies in the world. So this and more on Guts, Glory, and Story. Do keep a track of our social media also for COVID Tales. And that's it from our side this Saturday. Thank you very much for being with us. Sangram, thank you. And Stephen, thank you.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Alok. See you soon next Saturday. The recorded link for this session would be up late tonight. So any of your friends who would love to catch up on this, the recorded link would be up on our YouTube channel by the end of the day today. Yeah. With that, thank you very much for spending your Saturday evening with us, and we shall see you next Saturday. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.